Hi guys, I hope you are doing well. This is the second part of my qualitative research series lecture, and in the first part I talked about what grounded theory is and what are the different variants of grounded theory. I also gave you a brief introduction about how the very idea of grounded theory came into the mind of Glasser and Strauss, who are the propounder of classical grounded theory. In the variants, I talked about Straussian grounded theory, classical grounded theory, as well as constructivist grounded theory. And I also mentioned that there is another newer variant of grounded theory which are now increasingly being used, and that is interpretivist grounded theory. Now, in this second part, I will discuss how to conduct a grounded theory research, how to use grounded theory method in your qualitative research. Now, before we start a research that is using grounded theory, we have to keep certain points, certain instructions in our mind. The first is that when we are conducting a grounded theory research, it is expected that we do not have a well predefined and structured research question. The reason being, I have discussed in part 1 that when you go and you conduct grounded theory research, classical grounded theory research especially, you have a tabula rasa mind. That is, that there is nothing in your mind. You go with a very clear mindset, no preconceived notion, no preconceived literature review being done. And so when you go to the field, you interact with people, you develop some assumptions, you develop some idea, and then you create initial categories, and then you try to fill those categories, those themes, by collecting more data. So if you already have a predefined research question, well structured research question, most probably your sampling would be biased, your data collection would be biased. So to reduce those biases, it is expected that when you go to the field, you don't have a very well defined research question, but yes, of course, you will have an idea of the construct or the concept that you are trying to explore, and that is important. Now, the second theory is important aspects of grounded theory is that the very essential objective of grounded theory research is to create theory. Rather than just giving a researcher's perspective, which is what classical grounded theory says. So they say that you don't just give an perspective of what you as a researcher think, you simply create a theory based on the data, or you create a model. In simple language, you create a model or a theoretical model or an emergent model based on the data that you access, or based on the data that you came across with. So this is pure classical grounded theory, but constructivist grounded theory says that you don't just create a theory, build a theory based on the data that you collect, but you also add researchers view to those theoretical model or to those emergent model. So this is how the emergence of constructivist grounded theory can be observed. The third and important aspect that is common across all the variants of grounded theory research is theoretical sampling. Now, what is theoretical sampling? Is it a technique of sampling just like snowball sampling or like purposive sampling? Answer is no. Theoretical sampling basically means or has the assumption that the sampling does not is not a representation of a population. So when I say that I am observing behavior of school students, then in a survey method, usually I will collect data from school students itself. Grounded theory says that no, this sampling is not just done just because you have to represent a school sample, but the sampling is done based on the categories or based on the themes that are generated when you do your initial interviews. So what happens, you know that you want to explore school students behavior, so you interact with few people who have some relation with school education, either they are teachers or so on. And when you interact with them initially, then you realize that okay, students are more appropriate sample for my study, and then you interview more students for that, and then you create an initial model, or what you can say initial themes to be very precise, I'll tell you what these categories and themes are. But right now, just to make it very easy, you will create an initial model kind of thing where you will generate different themes. Now then you refine those themes by collecting more data, and you keep continuing collecting more data to redefine these themes in a better manner. And this constant comparison technique, where you go to the field, collect data, and you fill those categories with codes, and you keep doing it, and till the time you reach a saturation where you start getting same responses for same question that you asked to the people, there you stop. And then the sample size to at which this saturation is reached, that sample size is basically your theoretical sample, and this technique is theoretical sampling technique. So it is not just like purposive sampling, or not like snowball sampling or anything, where you already know the population and you go and you collect data and you know where to limit it. Here your sample size and your sampling technique itself is determined by the categories or the theoretical themes or models that you are exploring or that you are trying to fill with, rather than the population, which is your research sample or research pupil. So that is how theoretical sampling is different from rest of the sampling technique. Here one more thing is important, that in grounded theory, theoretical sampling is an essential. So you cannot say that you have not used theoretical sampling method, and if you are not using it, then you are doing wrong. So theoretical sampling is an essential aspect of grounded theory method. Wherever you do a grounded theory research, you mention that your data collection process follow theoretical sampling approach, where the sample size were determined based on the saturation of responses. Now, what is this saturation of responses? So to explain it further, you go to the field, you initially conduct some interviews, and you interact with people from different background and all. Then you realize that this particular background is more suitable for your theme generation, so you interview them further. Then you create initial themes. So to give you an example of what themes looks like, so if I say, somebody says that mango is tasty, the other person says mango is a fruit, third person says that mango is not a vegetable, fourth person says that mango is edible and yummy. In that case, the common theme would be mango is a tasty fruit. That's it. Now this theme is one theme that is generated based on the interview. Similarly, you will create more themes like that. This is like a small phrase, you're getting it, and which you generate based on the data. And but you are not recreating anything new at this level. You will create later, but not at this stage. Now to check whether the same theme is coming across other interviews or not, you will conduct more interviews, and you will find that other people also come up with similar interpretation of what mango is. Suppose the other person says that mango is not a vegetable, it is not also a stem or tree. So basically they are also referring to mango, and it is edible. They are also referring to mango as something which is a fruit kind of object thing. So somehow you are coming across the same theme across across the respondents of different age group, different population, and so on. So you will find that there is a consistency. So you will conduct one or more interview, and then you stop. Why? Because you have enough sample, you have enough responses to fill a category called mango is a fruit. So for that category you have enough sample. So you have reached the saturation where everybody is coming up with the same responses. They are not adding anything interesting or new to that interpretation. So you stop there, but you continue with the rest of the questions. And when all of your questions are exhausted and you have reached a saturation of responses for all your questions, then the number of people who have been interviewed till the saturation is reached, that number is basically your sample size. And this whole approach is basically theoretical sampling, where you're trying to fill the categories or themes rather than to represent a population. Also, data collection in grounded theory does not necessarily mean that you will interview people. You can also refer to reports, you can watch videos, you can listen to speeches and transcribe it. So all these can be source of data collection in grounded theory. And if you feel that I am talking something which is doesn't seems to be right, then you should refer to Charma's research articles, and you should also refer to seminal paper published by Glasser and Strauss and then Corbin and Strauss. They've all of them have explicitly stated that in grounded theory, anything and everybody can become your data sources. So it is not limiting to interviews now. And in contemporary times, the focus has gone more towards the reports, videos, and speeches rather than interviews, focus group discussions, and so on. Earlier, it was individual interviews because they conducted Glasser and Strauss conducted interview with dying patients in the for the nursing research. So in that cases, individual patients were interviewed. But later, more and more research on grounded theory came up, and they realized that even reports and videos and focus group discussion can be a good source of primary data and secondary data for grounded theory research. Now, the next thing that is very essential to grounded theory research, though not necessary, but in general it has been commonly used, and that is transcribing the interviews. Now, what is transcribing the interviews? I will also show how this transcription of interviews look like. But to give you an idea, whatever that I am speaking to you in this video, when you type each and everything, my expression, pause, my joy, smile if I am smiling and everything, when you include each and everything, all my conversation in a text form, in a textual form, and then you prepare that document is basically your transcript. Now, a transcript can go as long as 500 pages, 600 pages. To give you an example, I conducted an interview for say 31, 32 minutes, and that interview, when it was transcribed by me, it covered almost 65 pages. So even a short interview like 30 minutes, where discussions were not very in depth, still the transcription ran over 60 pages. For interviews that went for 4 hours or 5 hours, transcript can run across 1200, 2000 pages and even more like that, because lot of contents are there, and person take a pause, walk, and then he will come back, he will express joy, and then he will say no, I don't agree. So then you have to write each and everything, his expression. For that there are different techniques. So all these are part of transcription. And when your transcript is ready for analysis, you basically present it as a verbatim, basically a document which is further analyzed. So all your analysis now focuses on the transcript rather than on the interviews that you conducted. So you don't go back and listen to the interview as such, though you can do it, but you don't do it to avoid voices. You now focus only on that written document, typed document, and your analysis starts from here. So these are the important aspects that a grounded theory researcher should include while conducting a grounded theory research. Now, I have talked about quotes, I have talked about themes, but before that, let me show you how